Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Advocacy Day Issues webinar. I am Barb Colora with Resolve, and joining me is Sarah Bogdan with ASRM. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Thank you for being here and helping share about the issues for Advocacy Day this year.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so glad to see we've got so many advocates that are coming this year. I'm excited to get started.
Fantastic. Me too. All right. Well, let's just jump right in. So today's webinar, we're going to walk you through the issues, what is going to be taking place during your congressional meetings, what are we advocating for, what are the specific asks that we have for your members of Congress, and we're going to share a little bit more about the issues so that you feel comfortable sharing these during your meeting. And a reminder that our virtual advocacy day is Tuesday, April 25th. All right, let's right in. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure, let's get started. So I want to talk a little bit about what to expect when you start on this Advocacy Day adventure, right? So the first thing you should know that there'll be 3 scheduled virtual meetings for everyone. There'll be 2 senators and 1 member of the representatives. And we are so glad to have you here because your voice is really what matters here. As a federal lobbyist, I can tell you, constituents matter way more than what federal lobbyists matter and what they have to say. So we're so glad to have you here. So with these 3 meetings, you're going to be with other volunteers in your state or your region, and you're going to have a chance to plan your meetings and decide who will say what. You're not going to be alone in your meetings. Don't worry, we got you covered. So the one thing you should know about, specifically about your House of Representative meeting, is that if you are the constituent, even though if you're with other people, if you are the constituent, and this is your home district and this is your representative, it's really important that you are the person that's leading this meeting. That means that you are the constituent, and while every voice matters, your voice matters a little bit more if you're the constituent.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing during our meetings on Advocacy Day. So there's a document, we call it the Leave Behind. This is a document that has an infographic on one side. It's got a lot of data and facts and figures about family building and infertility. And then on the second side, it's got a summary of our issues. And we also list the specific bills that we're advocating for. This particular document is going to be sent to the staffers in advance by advocacy associates, the people who are making our appointments. However, we know that sometimes that document isn't looked at before your meeting. They may not have it right in front of them. So you're going to resend that leave behind to the staffers right after your meeting. But you're going to use that as a guide for yourself as well. And so what you're going to be sharing during the meeting is matching what's in that particular document that the staffers will then have in hand. So one of the things we're going to be doing also this year is we're not going to ask you to run through a list of bills and know all the details of every single bill. In fact, we're just going to have you talk about some big, broad issues and then reference the bills at the end, and we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. So what are these big, broad issues that we want you guys to talk about in your meeting? The first one is the legal right and access to medical care and the legal right for medical professionals to deliver that care. We're going to talk about coverage at work for all Americans. We're going to talk about how we need to remove barriers to family building for the military. And we're also going to talk about how to remove barriers to family building for our veterans. So that leave behind document is going to mirror your meetings. It's going to have a lot of the same talking points. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper into each of these 4 bullets that I just shared. And Sarah, you're going to walk us through a lot of this. So help us understand issue number 1.
Sure, thank you. So one of the reasons why you all are here is because you have a unique voice and a unique perspective on the issues that impact family building. And something has changed, right? Since the Supreme Court's decision in the Dobbs versus Jackson case, states are now passing more restrictive state laws for access of abortion. But many lawmakers and their staff have absolutely no idea that abortion restrictions may harm access to IVF. If you are someone who has access to IVF or may need access to IVF in the future, your personal story is important. And if you're a healthcare provider or somebody who works in a fertility clinic, your perspective is important to share for these meetings. It's so critical at this time. There are states that are in the process of trying to restrict IVF now, and this will continue to be a fight in the state level for the next 4 years. And this is why we decided it's really important to bring this issue to the front, which is why it's really important for federal law to enshrine access to IVF and an infertility care, because it will ensure access to everybody, regardless of location, and also maintain their right to build their chosen families, and the healthcare providers who are protected from penalization or criminalization. This is really important. We want Congress to protect IVF access for all.
Yeah, so Sarah, this is a new issue. We haven't talked about this before. And this is the first time ever at an advocacy day that we'll be talking about this particular issue. And of course, there's a bill that that matches this story. So I just want everyone to be clear, even if you participated in advocacy day in the past, this will be something new that you will be talking about in your meetings. And Sarah, if you could just explain why a federal law is needed, because can't states still just pass restrictive laws, maybe in 5 or 10 years, that would impair or harm people's access to IVF? Why do we need a federal law?
Because it matters on the state level. No one wants to travel out of state to access infertility care or fertility care. And it's important to be able to access that care in your home state, preferably within a really short geographic location. And it's not fair to push families to go out of state for that kind of care. It's also not it's not fair for providers to be forced to move, change their clinics, work across state lines. You know, some of these state laws that we've been starting to see on the abortion side, you know, it could easily roll into something else. We don't want there to be providers to be restricted to care for only patients from those states either, right? We want to be able to have people to be able to travel across state lines to access their care if they have to, right? But certainly we prefer it to be available in their local area.
And just as a reminder, a federal law would supersede any state law. So if we get Congress to pass a law that protects access to IVF and protects people's rights over their embryos, that would cover all 50 states and DC. So it wouldn't matter what a state tried to do, because they can't. A federal law supersedes any state law. All right, so that's why it's really, really important to get federal law passed. Okay, issue number 2, coverage at work for all Americans. So this is similar. If you participated in an advocacy day in 2022, this is going to be a similar ask. There are many millions of Americans who get their health insurance through their employer. And we want to share with our lawmakers on Advocacy Day the importance of that insurance coverage being comprehensive and available for all options of family building. We also want to point out to them that the federal government, which is the largest employer in the United States, has done some recent improvements. By the way, thanks to your advocacy last year, they've done some recent improvements to their benefits, but it's not enough. And so we want to let our lawmakers know that we need better coverage. We need better coverage for all Americans, and Congress has a role to play with the largest employer in the country. And we know that the federal government is a leader, and other companies look to the federal government and what kind of benefits they provide. So if we can get the federal government to provide very comprehensive benefits for family building, that is going to go a long way to helping all Americans. So we want to bring this up. We want to also mention that there are states that do have mandated insurance coverage, but it's only 14, and some of those are really inadequate. And we want you to share if you're in one of those states. But if you're in one of the states that's not, it's important for lawmakers to know that coverage is really spotty and very inadequate across the country. And then we have a stat in here from a survey that we've done that less than half of private employers offer comprehensive benefits for family building. And yet 97% of those who do said that it didn't result in a significant increase in costs. So we're really not seeing that cost argument holds up at all. So it's important for you all to share the lack of coverage that you have, or if you do have some kind of coverage, if it's adequate or not for all of your family building needs. So that's the key message here, and getting lawmakers to realize how inadequate the care is that the federal government does provide. All right, issue number 3. Go for it, Sarah.
Great, thanks. So I want to talk about issue number 3, which is removing barriers to family building for the military. So as you probably can imagine, military service members face unique challenges to family building. And TRICARE is actually the insurance for military, including Reserve and the National Guard. So TRICARE does provide very limited access for medical treatments such as IVF, but they require proof of infertility, and which was also caused by their service. And it's only available for service members who are in a legal heterosexual marriage. So let's talk about coital stuff. In order for service members to prove they're infertile, they need to be in a heterosexual couple who's been trying to conceive for 12 consecutive months. This leaves out many service members because they're not always with their partners for 12 straight months. This obviously leaves out service members who want to be solo parents as well as LGBTQI plus couples. So as you can see, this benefit is highly restricted and few have access. And perfectly frank, we need to be doing better here for our service members. So part of this ask is to, not everyone understands on the Hill that IVF access is so restrictive. So part of it is to give this air and light and inform them that this benefit is not for all, and that unfortunately it is highly restricted and limited, and that needs to change.
Yeah, this is one we've been advocating for many years, and we have not seen enough movement at all, right, Sarah? I mean, there's just been very little change in this, yet the environment has changed a lot. So we need to do a lot better. And I will say that oftentimes, and Sarah, I know you've experienced this too, and you mentioned this, lawmakers and their staff just really don't know. Even though we've been advocating for this, there's a lot of new members on the Hill. There's a lot of new staffers, and the people you might be talking to are new. And so this is really important for them to understand where things stand with our military. All right, issue number 4, Sarah.
So issue number 4 is also an issue that we really need to bring to light and bring some air and some, more knowledge and education on the Hill about, which is also removing barriers, family building for our veterans. The VA benefit closely mirrors, not exactly, but it closely mirrors the TRICARE benefit. The other thing is that this isn't law. It's a temporary appropriation that requires a yearly approval for IVF for veterans, a yearly approval, and would be really great if we didn't have to do this every year as a yearly approval. It'd be really great if we could offer a more robust benefit and it to be enshrined in law, right? So this, again, there are a lot of obviously hurdles when it deals with veterans. There's, service, you have to prove service-connected infertility. There has to be accompanied with military documentation, which sometimes is inadequate. Again, you still have to be a married heterosexual couple. you have to be trying. And to be perfectly frank, overall, there are many complex reasons why service members, might have had their fertility compromised during their actively serving years, and now they're on the VA side. There could have been, delaying childbearing, having the children until after they're serviced. There's toxic exposures. There are, all sorts of injuries that could happen during military service. And then when they switch over to the VA, that documentation may not be able to prove their infertility. So it's really important to talk about this issue for veterans. Overall, TRICARE and VA, service members and veterans are needlessly shut out of family building assistance. And we need to do better for both these individuals.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. So let's think about, we get into that meeting. We're going to share those stories. We're going to talk about kind of those rights to build our family. We're going to talk about coverage at work for all Americans. We're going to talk about military. We're going to talk about veterans. And then the whole point of this, Sarah, is to make that ask, is to have our advocates in those meetings close it down, right? Make a specific ask. So walk us through what those specific asks are going to be.
Sure, great. Specific asks. So this is where you get to the nitty gritty. This is like, because it's kind of like the uncomfortable pause that happens. So you make the ask and they're like, the staff is like, and you're like, yep, this is the ask. This is what we're asking. We need you to do this. We need you, your boss, to do this. So let's talk about the ask actually are. Can we count on your boss to protect access to IVF? If yes, we're going to connect them with the offices that we've been working with on some different pieces of legislation. It's a big ask, right? And, wait for that pregnant pause, as they say. Wait for them to mull it over for a second and give you a response. Force them into a response, right? That's the whole point of this. So the second was, can we count on your boss in supporting removing barriers to family building at the largest employer of the US, which is the federal government? So if yes, would you consider reaching out to OPM to encourage them to consider covering IVF? Right? Easy peasy, right? So the next one is, would you and your boss show your support for these issues by speaking out publicly and encouraging employers in your state and district prioritizing family building for their employees? So if they say yes, you're going to you're going to say we're going to connect you through an op-ed or a blog or a tweet, and then Resolve and ASRM will offer talking points. We can also help you connect that. When you go through your meeting training, there's going to be a feedback form and option that you're going to be able to do. And so in that feedback, you're going to put in if this congressional office was interested in any of these things, right? Just throw that in. And we'll go over a little bit more about that in a different training. But so the last ask is, can we count on your boss in supporting removing barriers to family building for those in the military and for our veterans? So if yes, we actually have a list of bills that we'll talk about that you'll have later, and we're going to ask them to co-sponsor these bills.
Yeah, so Sarah, this is a great list. It's not too much. And when you get to that point in the meeting where you're making these asks, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the staffer is going to try and maybe skirt around some of these issues and maybe not give you a firm answer. This is where it's really important for you all in the meeting to say, look, this is very important to me. I'm your constituent and I speak for thousands of people in our state and in our district, and this is really important to us. So I want to make sure you understand that they work for you. The members of Congress are elected by you and they work for you. And you don't need to be rude, you don't need to be combative, but it's okay for you to remind them how important these issues are to you and to other constituents that are in their district and in their state. Right, Sarah?
Absolutely. The point of this day is for your story to incite an emotional response so that they remember you and you can get them to encourage them to do a variety of these kinds of activities to support fertility. And so this is really important, and you're going to be able to give opportunities to continue building a relationship if you don't have a relationship with that staffer. If you get to know these staffers, these people work for you, and so therefore they should know you and your stories and what matters to you. And so, if it's the beginning of your relationship with a staffer, you're going to have an opportunity to continue that relationship with a staffer. If you're in the middle of your relationship with a staffer, it's important for you to remind them why this is so important and why these issues matter.
And I will just say that this is an opportunity for the members of Congress, as Sarah said, to get to know you, but to understand that you're an expert. They now have somebody in their district, somebody in their state that they know by name, that they know is an expert in these issues. And that's going to be really, really important as that relationship continues. And as we hope we build more and more champions on Capitol Hill. I can tell you that many of the members of Congress that are supportive of our pieces of legislation are because of you. They have said to me, they have said to Sarah, I've met all the Resolve and ASRM advocates year after year, and they brought these issues to our attention, and now we want to work on these issues. So you are building champions on the Hill and planting those seeds that that'll make a really big difference. All right, so let's look at, whoops, hold on, I have a slide there we go. So when we think about the bills, these list of bills are going to be on the leave behind. We are not asking you to walk through these bills. We're not asking you to know what these bills do. We're not asking you to understand all the ins and outs of every one of these bills. In fact, April 25th, many of these bills will not yet have been reintroduced. We have a new Congress that started in January. It's the 118th Congress. And a lot of these bills have not been yet reintroduced. They were introduced last year, but in December, they all died and they have to be reintroduced again in this new Congress. So there's one bill on the list. It's at the very bottom. It's got a bill number, but you notice all the rest of them don't have bill numbers yet. And that's because they haven't yet been reintroduced. And that's okay. In fact, it's an opportunity for you to continue to stay in touch with these staffers. So what's going to happen in your meetings, you're going to follow what Sarah said. You're going to talk about those 4 issues. You're going to make the ask, and then you're going to say there are a number of bills that cover the issues that we care about in Congress that have to do with family building, and they're listed on our leave behind. But I'm going to remind you and get back in touch with you when these bills get reintroduced. And you are going to do that because we're going to let you know. So let's say a month from now, the Access to Infertility Treatment and Care Act gets reintroduced. We're going to, ASRM and Resolve are going to reach out to you, and we're going to say that bill got reintroduced. Here's the bill number in the House. Here's the bill number in the Senate. Please contact your staffers that you met with on April 25th and now tell them, hey, remember me? Remember we talked about the need for insurance coverage. I would love for your office and my legislator to co-sponsor this piece of legislation. Here's the bill number, and here's how you do that. So that's what's going to be happening following up with Advocacy Day over the next few months as these bills get reintroduced. So again, it's an opportunity for you to just share with the staffer. There are a number of bills that we care about that cover the issues that we discussed. And when they get reintroduced, I'll be getting back in touch with you and letting you know and seeing how you can support. I'm just going to ask you though and tell you one more really cool thing. Because a lot of these bills haven't been yet reintroduced, we may want members of Congress to be on these bills right from the beginning. And that's called an original co-sponsor. If you sense that your meeting is going very well and the staffer says, wow, this veterans thing, we really want to learn more. We'd love to perhaps be a part of the reintroduction of that legislation? How can we do that? Can you let us know? If you get that kind of feedback, obviously you're going to share that in that portal that Sarah mentioned, where it's the feedback loop. And we're going to be looking for those kinds of pieces of information. Our issues are bipartisan. However, historically, most of our bills have not had many Republicans, if any Republicans, on these bills. If you are meeting with a Republican member of the House of Representatives, or you are meeting with a Republican member of the US Senate, it's vitally important that we hear from you if you think that they might be interested in any of these issues. We're going to be following up as well to see if they might want to be original co-sponsors. We'd love for these bills to get reintroduced with Democrats and Republicans on them right from the beginning. So Advocacy Day is very strategically placed here on April 25th for us to find out who might be interested in our issues, to introduce our issues to members of Congress, and to hopefully get a lot of Republicans and Democrats supporting our issues when these bills get reintroduced. Sarah, anything else on that point?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Okay. I mean, if you look at the number of bills that were introduced in the last Congress, and you think about the body of work, this is a lot. This is a lot of energy, and this is a lot of interest from a lot of different members of Congress in this space.
Absolutely.
There are certainly, let's just say, other spaces without such a robust list, right? This means that there are members of Congress who care about these issues. There's a lot of members of Congress that care about these issues. And that's why you're all here today, is to make those connections, to use your voice, to keep lifting up these issues and keep encouraging progress.
I also want to just say on that Leave Behind, there's going to be a link to a web page. It's called resolve.org/infertility issues. And that page is really just for staffers. It's going to recap these issues. It's going to list these bills, and it's going to have Sarah's information. It's going to have my information. It's almost a mirror of what's on that Leave Behind. And so that's a really great tool as you continue to follow up to point staffers to that web page. And again, it's going to be on the Leave Behind. And we'll continuously update that as the bills get reintroduced, adding their bill numbers. Bills, when they get reintroduced, we're going to know the staffers that are leading those bills, and we'll put their information on that web page. So it'll be a really great resource for the people that you're going to be meeting with on Advocacy Day. Well, that's it. I want to thank you. Sarah, I know you and I do a lot of work on Capitol Hill together, but we know how important it is for people and constituents to speak and to share their stories. And so we can't thank you enough. You are doing an amazing work for everyone in this country. Just the thought that you have taken the time to participate and to share your story and to really make a difference is we're really honored to do this with you. You're going to be in touch with your state captain. If you have not heard from your state captain, or you don't even know what I mean when I say state captain, please email us at advocacy@resolve.org. Let us know if you have any questions. Your story is the most important thing. When you just take a deep breath and you think about, oh my gosh, this sounds very daunting and scary, take a deep breath. Your story is what is most important. Your state captain is going to help you. And as Sarah has said, you're never going to be alone. Thank you again. Sarah, thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us today. And any final words?
I just want to reiterate, thank you for everybody who's participating. It really does make a difference. It really does matter. I worked on the Hill for 5 years. Constituents voices, medical providers' voices. It really does make a difference. And that's why we're all here today. And I really appreciate you all coming out and helping with this project.
See you on April 25th. Bye-bye.